First question we got here. Why do you do poetry or spoken word?
Honestly, it was like poetry was like is like my expression. That's my expression. I've been writing since I was 7, and so the first thing I ever wrote ended up rhyming because I felt like that's how it was supposed to be. Like if you write it, it's supposed to rhyme. Forget stories and novels and short stories and prose and all that. No, it's supposed to rhyme. So that was the first thing I ever wrote, and that's how it came out. But I enjoy it. Like I really am passionate about poetry, about lyricism, about rhyme schemes, all the scientific methods of writing and poetry. So definitely, it's my favorite. It's probably my favorite form of expression. So
okay, what are some of the inspirations behind your poetry?
Up until about 5 years ago, I would have said nobody. Like I would have been real deep and been like, Jesus is my inspiration. But probably my biggest inspiration, and I wouldn't even say influence because I don't try to write like him, but I take a lot from what he writes, is a writer, James Weldon Johnson. And James Weldon Johnson wrote, people know for his more famous stuff, like Lift Every Voice and Sing. They know about that. And, the Black National Anthem, and God's Trombones and different things like that. But he wrote these pieces, the creation, that would just shake you to your core. Just like the amount of passion that he wrote them with and the amount of conviction that he wrote them with. I'm like, I want somebody to be able to read what I have written and all that and get that have that same effect. Because he writes with so much compassion and so much strength that it's amazing. I've never read anything that anyone wrote like that. So James Weldon Johnson is probably one of my biggest inspirations.
This is just to encourage you that all pain has a purpose that extends even beyond us. Keep your head up. Pain is inevitable. Misery is an option. When the rain is incredible and shows no signs of stopping, and the main things you've held on to are slipping close to dropping, are you watching? Far off in the distance, plotting his assistance, inching closer and closer to our problems with persistence. It's hope. Just hope? Yes. Hope. Funny how such a short...
What message do you feel like that your poetry sends to people that read it, listen to it?
My goal is to kind of make the gospel or, the Bible or just God in general relative to whoever hears it. So, to really make it applicable. Like, a lot of people see God as this great big guy who controls everything, when God really desires to have an intimate relationship with us and for us to know about him, because he already knows about us. So for us to know about him and to learn who he is, so that we can, so we can really have a true understanding of who he is. So the goal is to make sure that the gospel and what they're hearing and the words and that God himself are seen as relevant and relative to them and to their life and to their situations.
Okay. Well, you already talked about James Weldon Johnson being like a inspiration to you, but who do you admire or look up to in the poetry world? I mean, I know everybody kind of says like Maya Angelou. So.
Yeah. I think the people that I kind of admire most are probably a little closer to my age range. As much as I admire Maya Angelou and people like her and people like Nikki Giovanni and people like that who have kind of stumped mud holes in the poetry world as far as making a way and paving a way for poets behind them. Personally, I'm a huge fan of Strawberry's Row. So, Carmen's Lasagna and Miles Hodges and Jasmine Mans and Joshua Bennett, all of them. I love them. I think they're phenomenal poets. Also, there's a guy who's making some waves out of California, Propaganda. That guy's insane. So those are probably like I would go in complete fan mode. If I was to ever meet them, I would go into complete and total fan mode because I'm very impressed with the work that they do and the things that they say.
Okay, so how are you different from other poets out there, and how are you the same too?
Well, I guess I'm different because I don't. Some poets that I know, I'm sure it's not all of them, but some poets that I know look for inspiration. Like they go out and seek inspiration. I'm always the one that's just inspired. Like it doesn't have to be some big dramatic happening for me to write about it. It doesn't even have to be something that I'm current. Like okay, say for example, you ever noticed how celebrities sometimes get involved in certain philanthropic efforts when it affects them close to home, like this rapper's mom happened to get cancer. So now he's a proponent for cancer research and breast cancer awareness and all that stuff because it kind of hit close to home for him. So the same is not the same for me. People are my biggest inspiration. And the fact that they need to hear something that's going to help them, the fact that they need something to listen to help them hold on and things like that. That's my biggest thing. So I don't look for inspiration. Inspiration kind of, if it makes any sense, kind of looks for me, and I end up writing about it. The same in that sleepless nights and all that. That's just real life. that's real life. I can't even, because when I was in the process of writing something to say, I don't think I did sleep. My mother would call me just to make sure I didn't answer, so she could know that I was asleep. Like it was just that serious. I was working 2 jobs and I was in school. I didn't sleep, and so the lack of sleep so many times. One time I had this particular poem that I wrote. I could not fall asleep until it was done. And as soon as I wrote the last word in the poem, I literally fell asleep with like the pencil in my hand. Like it was just like that. So, all the quote unquote blood, sweat, and tears that we kind of pour into, the art or whatever, it's I'm sure some poets can relate.
I should have written this a long time ago. I'm a firm believer in only speaking about what I know, and for the longest time, I knew I was forgiven, but never took the time to learn how to forgive. Pain is fleeting, inflicting its affliction during a chance meeting of emotion, reaction, and circumstance. Slightly slows the beating of speeding hearts for a few, wish they were more forgettable moments. But the resilience of the human spirit is on it, constructed with an ample dose of move-on-ness. Yes. Hurt, however, has a tendency to take up residence. Find the deepest corner of the heart and mind to slowly take precedence of emotion, reaction, and circumstance. You see, pain is something you have.
What motivates you? Like, not just with poetry, but like in life.
Okay, see, I'm about to sound real deep and real churchy right quick, but honestly, like for so long in life, I didn't really have anyone there or anyone around or anyone that was like supporting, the poetry, supporting what I was doing, and so it had to come from God, because I didn't have anybody else there pushing me. Like, listen, I believe in what you're doing. I believe that what you're saying other people need to hear. So I'm supporting you. I mean, I have support. I have that now, which is an amazing blessing. But God has been my biggest support system. So that's who I didn't have any mentors or anything like that. Nothing. I wanted a big sister, somebody. But honestly, God has been my biggest push and my biggest motivation and my biggest, inspiration. So, yeah.
Okay. What advice do you have for aspiring poets?
My first bit of advice would be, don't try to sound like your favorite poet, because that sound is already taken. Be original, be honest, and be yourself. People can't help but appreciate honesty. They can't help but appreciate when you're being authentic and you're speaking from a place of, that you know about, and not from a place that you've heard about. So it's important to be honest with yourself and to be honest with your audience. It's important to be authentic, and it's important to be open and real.
Okay. What's your favorite thing about poetry?
I love how stretchable poetry is. It's easy to put poetry in a box. I've had people to just blatantly come up to me like, "Yo, I don't even like poetry." And I'm like, "Okay." They're like, "But you kind of changed my mind a little bit." I'm like, "Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that." But a lot of my mom even said, "So poetry. I'm used to poetry being boring." I'm like, and you're entitled to that, because there's a lot of poetry that is snooze fest. Like, it's like, for real, And so, and even, man, listen, some open mics that I've been to, just terrible. I'm like, oh God, please help us, because and that's just people who really don't take poetry seriously. They feel like this is something they can do real quick, and oh, I can do that. I can make words rhyme. Anybody can make words rhyme, but that's not what it's about. So, yeah, I love the fact that poetry is a stretchable thing. It doesn't have to have one sound. It doesn't have to be one subject. It's never just one thing. It can definitely be stretched and pulled and adjusted, and I love that about it.
Okay. What are your thoughts about poetry in the mainstream? Because sometimes, people view it as like a underground type of thing. Sometimes a lot of people don't hear about it. So how do you feel about that?
I think it's at this point, just in 2013, and I think there's definitely a resurgence, because like earlier, a few years ago, you had your Def Poetry Jam, and so everybody's scrambling to get the Def Poetry Jam. All the rappers, all the hip hop heads, all the lyricists, they scrambling to get the Def Poetry Jam. It's on HBO, it's Russell Simmons, oh my God, and so that kind of sparked somewhat of a movement from underground, which is where poets were, and I think a lot of them were very comfortable with it. So, it kind of sparked a movement from underground kind of to mainstream. It was introduced to mainstream. And then I think Def Poetry Jam really started some more stuff off. So you had which is kind of an offshoot of Def Poetry Jam, you had your Brave New Voices, and you had, different stuff like that. So, but you didn't hear about it so much. So now there's more of a resurgence where people are way more open. You go to open mics, and it's not just about singing no more. You have poetry shows, you have poetry organizations, you have different things like that are really trying to push spoken word to the forefront. So mainstream, personally, I'm not the biggest advocate of mainstream. I'm telling you, all the good stuff is underground, but poetry is definitely coming to the forefront, though. It's we have a solid foundation. I mean, poetry's been around since Bible days, before that, so it's definitely being pushed to the forefront. So which makes it, which is a blessing and a curse to kind of, because it's a blessing on the side that now people, spoken word artists have a platform where they can be seen. Kind of a curse because you're gonna have people coming out the woodworks like I'm a poet too, and I guess it's the up and down of kind of providing a platform. So
you have a project coming out, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, man, something to say. My sophomore album, it's coming out January 29th, tomorrow. And it's 13 tracks on the album. And it's just dealing with stuff like forgiveness and love and hope and patience and faith and strength, all that good stuff. It's one of the important things I really wanted to do with this project is to incorporate like good music along with the spoken word. So I got with some producers, some producer friends of mine, and we worked, and I think we really created a really good album. And so I feel like there's something there for everybody. We're talking about social issues, talking about youth, talking about the world, talking about all that stuff, and it's all packed into the album. So I'm really excited about it. Like you said, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Google Play, wherever else it'll be there. And I'm excited and very nervous about it.
Hey, what does it mean to you?
Well, the reason I had been writing since I was 7 is because I didn't feel like anyone would hear what I had to say. So I wrote it down. And writing was my way of processing everything that, kind of a tough childhood. So writing was my way of processing everything that was going on around me. Even if I didn't understand it, at least I had an outlet. I had a creative outlet that I could use to write down my feelings and write down stuff I wanted to write down. And so I was always the quiet little girl, but I always had something to say. But knowing, even though I knew I had something to say, something good to say, I didn't think anybody would listen. So it was always something to say, but never saying it. So, that's kind of where this project, the name of this project comes from. I've always had something to say, but, never felt like anyone would listen. So now, maybe a few people will listen, so.
Okay. And Hope, that's the leading single from the album,
Yes.
right? So,
yes.
What was the motivation or inspiration behind that single?
I'll tell you this much. God is a comedian, okay? And he's not going to let, I don't know if it's everybody or what, but me personally, he's not going to let me go through anything that I don't know about. So Hope was written based on stuff that I went through and kind of a reminder, well, your hope is not in things. Your hope is not in situations. Your hope is not in your job. It's not in your education. Your hope is in God. And so, and with God being eternal, that's an amazing place for us to place our hope is in God. And so that was, the hope came right out of some stuff that I was going through. And that was the result.
You watching? Far off in the distance, plotting his assistance, inching closer and closer to our problems with persistence. It's hope. Just hope? Yes. Hope. Funny how such a short word.
What other things do you do besides poetry and spoken word?
I am working in Baltimore. My job title is community builder. And so basically I make sure that people in this particular neighborhood that I work in Baltimore City, I make sure they have fair access to resources like health care, like energy assistance. We have a food pantry that, I order food for. We have community dinner. I I help plan events. I write grants. I do a lot of different things here, and I really, really enjoying it, really getting a lot out of it, and really learning a lot. So that's my current job title. That's what I do. Among other things, like I do workshops, like poetry workshops sometimes. Do just different things like that. So.
Okay. Speaking about these poetry workshops, what are some of the differences between like spoken word, like writing out poetry, and performing poetry? Like, I feel like it's all kind of different. So, what are your thoughts on that? It's something, yeah.
I would, and some people would argue with me, but spoken word and poetry are two entirely different things. Poetry might not ever get spoken. Some people might come to like I said, I've been to enough open mics. Like where some people come up and they have a poem written down, and basically what they're doing is reading the poem over the mic. And so there is a kind of a level of performance there, but most of what they're doing is reading the poem over the mic, whereas somebody else has their poem memorized. And so when you have your poem memorized, that kind of gives you a little bit of power in that not only are you reciting it from memory, but you're adding in the facial expression and the emotion and, hand gestures or whatever, however you deliver your piece, you're performing it. You're not just reciting it, you're performing it. So to me, that's the biggest difference. It's poetry and spoken word. It's like spoken word is poetry, but poetry is not spoken word, if that makes sense.
Okay. What's your favorite thing about poetry and spoken word?
My favorite thing about poetry is just like I said, it doesn't have to just be one thing or one way. Same thing with spoken word, man. I love spoken word in that two people can get on stage and do a spoken word piece and just blow your mind. And then one person can go on stage and they do their thing and they might add, some singing into it and, kind of mesh it all together. And you might have somebody come up on stage and how, when we were in high school and we would grab a pencil, all we needed was a pencil and a cafeteria table and create a beat, and then, add that into the spoken word. I love how much stuff you can do with it. So it's tough to kind of get through to people that there's not just one way to do something. That you can be creative with your creativity, and make it your own. Make it authentic. Make it authentic. Make it original. So I love that about spoken word.
Okay. What are your short and long-term goals, like personally and professionally?
Short-term goals. I'm actually in the process of writing or finishing up writing a devotional to go along with something to say. Hoping to release it in April, and so it'll be like on Kindle and all that stuff. But it'll be a hard copy book of it'll be like the lyrics, it'll be scripture references, and it'll be an actual devotional and all that, wrapped into one book. So that's a short-term goal. Also working on a few organizations here in the area, helping to launch True Voices DC, which is like a Christian spoken word. It's kind of like P4CM. In that it provides a platform for Christian spoken word artists, and True Voices itself actually started in New York by a guy named J. Escobar, and he approached. I had an event in Queens in October, and so he approached me after the fact, and he was like, "Listen, we're trying to start, True Voices DC." And they actually got a couple of other chapters starting too, one in Chicago and one in Jersey. And so he was like, I really want you and another poet, Camden. Camden actually came from P4CM. And he said, I really want you guys to, spearhead this True Voices DC. And so working on that, working on a few other things as well. So just those are the short-term goals. Really looking forward to those. Long-term, you wouldn't believe me if I told you this is like the 10th time I've been asked this in the last 4 months, and I still don't have an answer. Long-term rather. Basically, because I just moved up here to Maryland like 5 months ago. So I definitely want to settle down on the East Coast. Probably Virginia or Maryland, either or. Definitely want to be at that point, I imagine a long-term goal being maybe 5 to 10 years from now. I would definitely like to be mentoring as far as spoken word and poetry. And professionally, I don't know. I might be charging $10,000 a show. No, it's just funny. I'm just hey, no, I'm joking. But, yeah, I would love to still be, maybe still be doing poetry, and sharing, and I don't know. That's a good question. I should write something down. I think I'm going to do that really soon.
I wish I could construct a skyscraper of speakers, with a top floor so far above us that once I reach it, I'm face to face with Apostle Peter. Mind you, this is no attempt at babble. No, my intent is much less laughable, much more palpable. It's past time to give our purpose a platform worth more than your titles, careers, income, and what you put back for.
What's your favorite thing to do besides poetry?
Travel. I love traveling. I love going different places. And I need to quit playing and get a passport so I can exit the country possibly soon. But yeah, I love traveling.
What's your favorite place that you've ever been?
Probably New York. Yeah, I like New York. I don't want to live there, but I like it.
Okay. Which of your projects are you most proud of?
It's going to have to be something to say.
Wow.
So far, I got 2, so. Well, with my first album, Matters of the Heart, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't have any people in place. I was doing a lot of stuff myself. So, and I have a tendency to be a bit of a perfectionist. So I found some flaws, after the album was already out that I could do nothing about it. It just pains me sometimes to listen to it. I'm like, I could have fixed that. I could have fixed that. But, it was something to say. I like it. I like kind of how my lyricism, I guess, has progressed from the first album to the second album. How I like it I like it musically. I like it. It's you see all your energy and sweat and tears and money come into fruition, and so that makes the biggest difference in the world. So, yeah.
Okay. What's the most fun thing you've ever done?
The most fun thing I've ever done. Shows how much fun I have, right?
Or most interesting?
Probably, getting to P4CM. October 2011. Okay, so I was still in Memphis at that time. I had to drive from Memphis to Atlanta to catch my flight. For one, because the flight from Memphis cost like $800. Right, yeah. And then from Atlanta, it was like $300. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm going to drive to Atlanta. So I drove between Atlanta and Memphis is a solid 6 hours. Like, there's no speeding or anything that you could do to shorten the trip. It's a solid 6 hours. So drove from Memphis to Atlanta. This is overnight. I got off work at like 10, and then I hit the road at like 11 that night. So if my mother knew that, she would kill me. So I drove from 11 I got to Hartsville. Almost missed my flight. That would have been just the absolute worst. So I get there and get my flight and connecting flight in Phoenix, and then from Phoenix to LA, and off the plane into the car straight to the church where the event was going to be held. Changed in a bathroom the size of my laptop at the church. I'm like, oh my gosh, why is this bathroom so small? And so put stuff on, sweating, and so we headed to the door to go to where the other poets are, and dude stops me at the door like, who are you? I'm like, I'm Kezia. I'm scheduled to perform tonight. Hold on just a second. So he gets on his radio. We got a Kezia here. She says she's scheduled to perform tonight. Is she on the list? I'm like, okay. And they was like, yeah. Give her a wristband and send her down. I'm like, okay. So, I go downstairs to where the other poets are, and they're all praying, and I'm just sitting here just trying to catch my breath. And so Genetics, she's like, hey sis, I'm glad you made it. I'm like, hey. And so she was showing me the set list, and she was like, so we were thinking about it and we really prayed about it. We really wanted to start it off with a bang, so you're first. What? She's like, you're first. I'm like, okay. That's terrible. All right. And so she was like, no, sis, you got this. I'm like, I don't. All right. So I get out on, we start to prep, and, they do the intro and all that first. And then they call me out. The mic is super loud. Everything was just, I was aware of everything. So the mic is super loud. It's like reverbing back on me. So every word I say, I can hear it 10 times. And so, I'm standing there in front of 1,800 people. Church was packed, and I could hear every breath, every snap, every heart. Man, that was the most intense moment of my life. I could hear everything. I heard somebody swallow their gum. I heard everything. And so I'm like, did y'all give everybody in here a mic? I could hear everything, man. And so did the poem, finished with it, went backstage, and fell out. I literally hit the floor. They were like, you okay? I'm like, I'm good. Just trying to take it all in. And so the stage manager was like, please don't do that again. I'm like, don't worry, I won't. So it was a great night. Went to, after the event was over, went to Roscoe's. And, of course, I was heavenly experience. And slept on my friend's apartment floor for 4 hours. And got up the next morning and caught a flight back home. So I was actually in LA for 18 hours. It took me 1 billion hours to get there, but I was actually in LA for 18 hours, and then 1 billion hours to get home. That was probably my most interesting experience.
What makes you happy?
Accomplishment. Getting stuff done. That definitely makes me happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's something a lot of people don't know about Kezia that you want them to know?
Whenever I need to concentrate, I listen to Beethoven. That's either the 7th Symphony, the 5th one, or the 9th one. That's how I concentrate.
Let us know like where we can find you at on like Instagram, Twitter, website, all that type of stuff.
Okay. Website is KeziaThePoet.net. Instagram is Kezia S7. Social cam is Kezia S7. Yeah. YouTube, Kezia the Poet. Facebook, Kezia the Poet. Twitter, Kezia the Poet. Reverb Nation is probably going to be Kezia the Poet. SoundCloud, you can just search Kezia the Poet. Other stuff is probably Kezia the Poet. I just lost my track of social media, but yeah, it's mostly all Kezia the Poet.
Okay. Anything else you might want to share?
Not really, man. Just if you go and purchase the album, please email me, KeziaThePoet@yahoo.com, and tell me how you feel about it. Tell me how you like it. Tell me what could be done better. This is for you. This is for people. So I definitely love feedback, and I love to hear from people and see what they think.
That extends even beyond us. Keep your head up. Pain is inevitable. Misery is an option. When the rain is